Cool, yeah.
It is preparing itself. We should be live. I don't know. I don't know if it needs to like load first, but okay, we should be live.
Okay. Hello. This is welcome to zFest. This is Monday. We're hanging out with Greg Patillo, who's uh, a beatboxing flute player and part of the group project trio, and we're excited about it. You wanna go ahead?
Nice, thanks. All right, yeah, what's up? I'm Greg Patillo. I play the flute. I'm known for beatboxing on the flute. I'm gonna start this off. I'm gonna play a work. I wrote this work almost 10 years ago. It's called The 3 Beats for Beatbox Flute, if you can see it. It's, like I said, it's 5 or 6 minutes. Kind of showcases the sounds that I'm talking about. I hope you dig it. It goes like this. Thank you very much. Like I said, my name is Greg Patillo. I play the flute. I'm known for beatboxing on the flute. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I got my act together in high school and made it to a classical conservatory. I went to the Cleveland Institute of Music in the late 90s. I did an undergrad and a graduate studies there. I graduated grad school in 2001, thinking I would rule the world as a classical flutist. And I took a bunch of auditions, and I even got a job briefly playing in China. And I decided that wasn't for me. And having nothing going on, I moved back to the States and started moving around. Moved to the Bay Area, where I really fell out of classical music. No one was trying to listen to my Mozart or my Telemann. So I was trying to find ways to diversify. And I started flute playing. My first flute lessons in the fourth grade were from Suzuki method. So I knew how to play by ear as a young kid. It wasn't really like a strange thing to do improv or making up my own music, because that's kind of how I learned to make music. So as an adult out of school trying to diversify, I was trying to find different ways, different flavors. I tried playing in jazz bands. I tried making up my own rock groups. I played in a bluegrass band. I played in a salsa band. I was beatboxing on the flute. And then that's kind of what resonated the most amongst my peer group. They liked the beatboxing. So I was down to practice it because I like impressing people with my musical stylings. I've always been a street performer. Growing up in Seattle, this pretty temperate weather, I found out as a teenager I could go out there and just like play the Burbank books and make money, you know, like you're young and you have the cute thing going on and you can just like rock it. And so even still today, I like to play in the subways, except till about 4 months ago when no one goes on the subway anymore here in New York City. I moved to New York City about getting on 15 years ago now. And I couldn't find any work, man. No one wanted to hire me. No one cared about me. This is a common theme you as aspiring professional musicians will find out in the world. Nobody cares about you or your music. You have to like make them care about it. Like no one's gonna go to your recital anymore. You have to like sell your recital somehow. And so I couldn't put butts in seats, so I couldn't get gigs. No one wanted to hire me. I was trying to style myself a beatboxing flute player. Nobody knew what that was. Nobody cared. But I played in the subway. I had a pretty good set going. I needed to pay the rent, so I had a square job. I was working at a place called Trader Joe's, a little grocery store. And they open one up in Union Square, and then you got to take an hour-long lunch break in most like service jobs like that. And so I would, so it's an 8-hour shift with an hour lunch break with a 45-minute commute on either side. When are you gonna blow long tones? When are you gonna play scales? So I packed my flute to work. I started playing during my lunch break in the subway, and I started making pretty good money playing in the subway. And this was right as this crazy app called YouTube was coming into be. And so I made some videos, and this was very hard back in the day because nobody had video phones yet. The iPhone hadn't been invented. I convinced someone, I gave them some music. They were a film school student, and they filmed me, and I played my lunch set from the subways to this camera, and we put up some of the videos, and I kind of had a bunch of great viral success back in 2007. Back before you could make any money doing that. But what I got now is a career and a bit of notoriety. I'm kind of known for this sound, beatboxing on the flute, whatever that is. And today I would like to spend some time talking about those sounds, talking about ways you can use these sounds. I'm going to talk about improvisation in general, and I want to open up the discussion to diversifying your concepts of what you can do professionally as a musician, and how you need to maybe, instead of waiting for the teacher to show you new tricks, you need to seize the new tricks on your own. You need to be out there actively trying to find opportunities, creating content, not just things to play, but creating content could be a new business or a festival like this, something that is yours, something that you can do and apply all of the work you've done beyond just, trying to get a job playing in an orchestra or trying to get a university tenure track. Those positions, as awesome as they are getting harder and harder to find. So that being said, I'm going to do a little medley now. So the first thing I played was like a piece I wrote for high school flute players, and it was commissioned by an organization of flute players called the National Flute Association, and they have a little convention, a big convention every year. It goes to a different city. And so in 2011, I wrote that for the high school students, having no idea if they would be able to beatbox because their teachers didn't beatbox on the flute, but these kids had to learn to do it. I gotta say, man, everyone stepped up and everyone played the piece. Really amazing when I saw it. But now I'll do something a little more pop. I'm gonna play some tunes that all of you, I'm sure, have heard before to some extent, and I'll just see where this takes me. Excuse me. very much. All right. Oh, we got some emotes cracking. Okay, okay. Nice. All right. I believe, I believe, I believe that people really like music they know, right? And so, in terms of programming or trying to get strangers into your music, it helps if they know some of it. And it's clever these days to take music that people know and do something to it, twist it, like doing classical versions of hip hop tune or country versions of classical tunes or whatever. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at you all right now. Let me see by a show of hands, how many people here improvise? Okay, most of you. Or how many people here wish they did more improvising? Okay. Now, I've noticed, I'm assuming a lot of you guys are in school or did school or going to school, and chances are most of you are studying some semblance of classical music at school, right? Is anyone here studying a jazz degree? Is anyone here doing composition? Okay, nice. Oh, okay, good. And so I believe that I have a lot of thoughts. They're all totally unfounded and uneducated about how it is that writing your own music and improvisation fell out of classical music. But it's this crazy thing that about 100 years ago, everyone stopped writing, not everyone, obviously, but it became in vogue to play other people's music. You didn't really improvise anymore except to do your own cadenzas. And I think the time is right, and I've seen it now in a lot of institutions, people trying to push this concept to improvise, to write your own music. And I would just like to second that. I think all of you guys, if you have studied music more than, you guys obviously are into music if you're doing this program and you're in school. You can teach yourself anything. I kind of believe the role in college, besides networking, is to teach you how to teach yourself. A professional musician doesn't take lessons anymore. If you need to learn a skill, you got to learn the skill yourself. There's no more like spending 6 months getting ready for the recital. You just put it together really quick. Like, you can learn music really quick, you play it, you move on. And I believe in goal-oriented study, and having something like a deadline really helps too. Now, unfortunately, this spiel hasn't been adapted too well to coronavirus. So I don't know where you're going to do your next recital. I can't give you like the dopest Zoom tips for playing or whatnot. But I believe that a lot of the issues with collegiate music making is they've spent their whole life being told they're not good enough. You're not ready. You're not good enough. But chances are you do something that is really unique. You have unique thoughts, and you probably aren't sharing them with your teacher, because why would you want your teacher always to know? Like, my teacher in college did not do beatbox flute. He didn't do any improvising. I didn't really share that with him at all. And instead, I learned everything I could in school that school had to offer. And then when I was not in school, i.e. at night, I was doing all the other things, like really burning the candle at both ends. And it's very social too, the things that I'm up to as well with the music. But what I want to do a little bit is I want to talk a little bit about beatboxing on the flute, of course, and give you guys kind of beatbox 101. But also I included some handouts. I don't know if you guys got those or looked at it. I couldn't help myself, so I put a picture of myself on it. If you guys want to follow me on any of the social medias, go ahead. It would be not due diligence if I didn't include that. But one of my favorites right here, well, these are all favorites, is my little list of scales. All right. Now, I noticed a lot of classical kids, man, they study their major scales. And then I'm like, do you know any minor scales? And they're like, yeah. and they maybe know a minor scale. But there's a lot of scales out there to play. There's a lot of scales to study, and they don't need to be finger exercises. You know, a lot of cats blowing fast scales to try to get their fingers trained. Evenness in tone, evenness across registers is kind of a different trick for different instruments. But in improvisation, you know, really we're training the ear. And a lot of you, even if you feel you aren't good at improvisation, I've noticed that classical kids are like, yeah, I like improvisation, but I can't bust all those dope jazz licks. But dope jazz licks, although cool, are not necessarily improvisation. And so improvisation can field a wide range of styles. And one of my favorite things to do, I'm a foundation guy. I still like to warm up. I like to blow long tones. I like to blow scales for the evenness and tone and all this, but also I like to put on a long tone and then improvise over it. And I recommend all of you do this too. It doesn't have to be towards any end. This doesn't have to be goal oriented. It can be just about recognizing the things that you know and the things that you don't know. For instance, all of our fingers tend to find, I call it the rut. You know, like in a road, wagon wheels make a rut. And then when you're playing, you're like, man, I always just kind of play the same thing. You know, when I'm goofing off or whatever, like, how do I get outside of the rut? And I think scales and ear training are really important to that. First, defining what it is, your rut. If you can actually write out all of the patterns that you're drawn to, you will then know the patterns that you don't play. And these scales right here, these 18 scales, there's some modes, there's a couple of manipulations of some jazz scales, the diminished scales, a couple of things like this. I just really feel that they really will open up your mind and your ears. I wrote all of these out in every key and groupings, so like all the Dorians and all this. If you want to know more about this, I have a Patreon page, which I included in the first page there of the handouts. And I think it's $3. You could always join and then not pay at the end of the month and dip out if you really have to. But you can you could download the full bit of scales if you're into this. I think it's super, super cool. How many people here do have instruments? Some? All right, so the cool thing about Zoom, I don't know if this is cool, is that we can't all jam together. And this is really unfortunate, you know? But if I have 18 scales in C, let me see if this works, yo. So can you hear this? All right, everybody sing this note. I have no idea if you're singing this note right. And I don't want to hear it.
Okay,
all right, it's just for you. Find this note. And then in singing this note, this is kind of like improvisation 101. Sing not this note. Sing not this note. And then go to the note. Now I did a major third. I don't know what you're going to do. Surprise yourself. Just sing a note that's not this note. Take a deep breath. Let me see you take a deep breath. And sing a note. And resolve. Okay, now we're going to sing this note, go the opposite direction of what you just did, and go back to the note. Okay, kind of an A, B, A, kind of a C. Ready? Let me see you breathe. I can see you breathe. All right, and so over this with your instrument, if you have an instrument, go ahead and get it out. And if you can see this, this page, pick a scale. Pick a scale maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know your diminished scales or your diminished whole tone scale, or maybe a bebop scale. And I would like you to, if you can do it so that you can hear this note as well, I would like you to just experiment for a little bit. I'm going to give you like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I'm forcing you to improvise right now, okay? And even what I'll do is I'll do it too. I'll mute myself, okay? No, I can't mute myself because I want you to hear the tone. I'll just watch you guys do it, okay? And while out, you know, pick some scales, pick some notes, and do something. Go ahead. You're on the clock. If you don't got an instrument, sing. Oh, hey, thank you. There you go. Nice. Oh, yeah, those are the good ones. All right, last 15 seconds. Okay, that's enough of that. Thank you for participating in that. I think improvisation gets a dirty reputation, and I really like to do. I would call this timeless improvisation. There was no beat, there was no rhythm, but whatever you're bringing to the table. And so when I think about music like this, it's like what you hear kind of in the yoga studio, depending on what yoga studio you're going to. And I think that's a really great aim for beginner improvisers is to do long, timeless improvisation. The goal for the beginner being to start to amass the patterns, finding patterns. And what you're ultimately trying to do is be able to remember what you've done instead of just playing and have freak out mode where you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just wiggling my fingers and blowing. That instead, maybe you have a plan, a scale, a form, something that you're going to be thinking about. And then when you're done, even if it didn't go according to plan, if you can remember what you've done, you can work on it. These are ways to get out of the rut. These are ways to expand your ear. And furthermore, when you listen to other people playing music, you can start to hear these patterns. It should be really easy when you hear music to pick out what key it's in. I don't have perfect pitch, but I can always sing the root, and then you can determine the scale, and you can find a form and things like this. Make sense? You guys cool with that? All right, cool. So, but, okay, timeless improv, very interesting, whatever. Okay, but I like to do very rhythmic stuff too. And so I like to do a style of flute playing that's not exactly beatbox flute, but kind of rhythmic flute playing. And this uses a bunch of breathing tricks and kind of different articulations as well. So things like So that was just a little improv, but I got this little subdividing groups of 4 sheet that I want you to check out as well. And this is 3 different ways of writing basically the same concept. And I think that as classical musicians, if all you know about rhythms is how to read them on a page, you're at a disservice. A lot of pop music mentality, a lot of jazz, funky rhythms are extremely hard to notate. If you've ever had the pleasure of sitting in an orchestra and the conductor asks everyone to swing it, it's a frickin' disaster. Nobody knows how to do it. It's like asking American orchestra people to do the Viennese waltz move. It's also a disaster. Like, they don't get it. And so there's cultural rhythmic issues that kind of transcend the page, okay? For me, I like to do a lot of music on computers. Specifically, I like step sequencers a lot. And when you start programming music, you realize if you're looking at a 4/4 bar of 16 16th notes, and each note can be on or off, all of a sudden, like having a downbeat, you know, is it a 16th note downbeat? Is it a quarter note downbeat? And then this kind of plays on that a little bit, so that if we have in group 1 of the sheet are all the different ways, the 16 different ways you can arrange the 16th notes in a beat. Yeah. So we have, for instance, the first one, and you can think of these all as 16th notes, 8th notes, quarter notes. It doesn't really matter. I did it as 16th notes. And so we have, on the first line, we have all the singles. We have the first 16th note, the second 16th note, the third 16th note, the fourth 16th note. And then we have the doubles, 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, and 1 and 4. And then we have the strong beats, or 1 and 3, the back beats, 2 and 4. And then the triples, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. And then everything on 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course rest. So there's 16 ways that you can take a group of 4 notes with rests and organize them. And so the same can be, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Here, do I need to pay attention to the chat? I wasn't really. Oh, I see.
No.
Okay. Oh, no, I don't. Okay, that's fine. By all means, chat. I don't care. Just if I go off topic or something, let me know. So the same can be said, though, this kind of idea, instead of just note on, note off, you can have accents. So if we're always running 16th notes, right? That would be marking the first one. If I don't have a beat going, you would never know that I was marking the second one. If I go, so playing these now along with a metronome, or even better, some sort of beat, can really help. Also, starting to take these, you can randomly do this. If you play D&D and have a 16-sided die or something like this, you can roll them and you can start putting them together. So if I take in example 2, the bar numbers aren't marked here, but if I just do the left column, you know, you can get a pretty cool pattern. So I'd get like, and that gets us to something that I call vamps, rhythmic patterns. And so if I take that vamp right there and kind of play between accent and rest, and I get, you know, you can really quickly find a musical phrase and kind of have it be a kernel that you could play with. And exercise 3 on the flute, I play with this, I kind of think of the flute having 3 tones: classical tone, tone with your voice, you know, so we have, and we can make it dirty. It's kind of like overdrive flute, if you sing poorly with the flute. And then if you open your mouth, you get, And so that's an Aeolian tone, and that's what that X head means for me and my flute community. Whatever instrument you have, I saw some cellos playing muted, covering the string, doing something like this, maybe even pits versus bow. You can find some same rhythms, different change in tone color. Okay, so I think about these groups all the time. And I'm to the point where I can keep it in my head. I don't have to write it out, and I can hear them in music. I can write these things out, and I do. And I hope maybe you aspire to that if you're not doing it already. All right, so for another concept on rhythm and vamp and improvisation, would someone text what they had for breakfast in the chat? Just something. Coffee. Okay, I'll take that. Coffee, granola, and yogurt. So look, coffee, coffee, coffee. It's not coffee, it's coffee. There's a prosody in language that's worth playing with. So coffee is a great vamp. Granola and yogurt. And that was just a riff. Okay, so the using language to find prosody, to find patterns, to find a kernel of a vamp or something that you can improvise on, I think is a really powerful technique. I think it's something you can use. I think as those of you out there that are teaching or going into teaching, I'm highly into teaching things I don't know anything about. I think it's okay. Like really, like sometimes teaching's about inspiring, and you don't always have to have all the answers. Doesn't mean you have to like gaslight someone. I mean, you don't have to be like BSing someone about it. But even if you don't know anything about improvising or modern music or anything, you can still encourage other people to do it in a great way. And so I think these concepts, you can get the youth. Like getting a 9-year-old to do these concepts on their instrument is super easy. And these ideas of vamps and rhythms, we're not even talking about scales or 16. You don't have to break it down into the musical realm. I include this because a lot of classical musicians that are old, you're already so trained, you need this sometimes to get there. Okay, so is that clear? You guys down with this so far? All right, cool, great, good, great. Great, trapped in a box. And so I really like to sample music. I use Ableton Live. Anybody else here use Ableton Live? Okay, Ableton Live is the bomb. And I rip all sorts of music from the internet and make my own samples and make my own jams that I share with nobody. But I have a little playlist here, and I'm gonna run through some of my beatbox sounds right now. And I'm gonna just use some, I'm gonna use this. Can you hear that? Can you hear it, Peter? Okay, nice. This is an insanely popular beat that's been sampled on like 1 million different tracks, mainly from 90s hip hop. But this is like Mama Said Knock You Out, if you know that. You guys know that one? It's an LL Cool J cut from back in the day. Or OPP, you guys remember that one? The same beat, okay? This beat is in thousands of songs. And like I said, I just jacked it off the internet. I sampled it, I put it together, and I made like a 2-minute cut of it. And after this, we'll just cycle through some jams. But I want the beat because I think that playing along with a beat is way cooler than just playing with a metronome. I like metronomes, but I think it's really important to have the weight of a downbeat and have the weight of a backbeat and have some sense of syncopation or how the beat fills in. It can give you a vibe that I think is really important. And so now I want to talk about just beatbox. I want to give you guys beatbox 101. No matter what your instrument, if you do not play a wind instrument, it is super easy to beatbox and play your instrument. Like if you played a cello, beatboxing and playing the cello is super easy to do together, especially if you can just hold some long notes on the cello. Boom. Super nice. All right, so if you ask your drummer to show up to the gig and they don't want to bring all their equipment, they pare down the drum set to just 3 sounds usually. A hi-hat cymbal sound, some sort of a bass drum sound, and some sort of a snare sound. You can go beyond that too, but let's just leave it there. We're going to talk about those 3 sounds and we're going to figure out a way to make some beats together. So the first sound we're going to talk about is the closed hi-hat sound, which I spell TS. You do it. Everybody. Breathe after each sound. Breathe in time after each sound so that and so we can actually make this sound a couple of different ways. We can exhale it, TS, and we can also inhale it. Everyone inhale it. And then we can go back and forth. This is tip of the tongue, exhale, inhale, like. All right, and so that gets a little bit windy after a while, you know what I'm saying? It's a little bit of an advanced technique to double tongue it. Us wind players, we learn, a lot of us, to double tongue. So tucka 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 tucka, and we can double tongue that with an S. But we use our K more often than not on backbeats. Backbeats, I'm sure you know, are beats 2 and 4 in a bar. And if we do classic double tonguing, tucka 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 ta, our Ks aren't lined up. So for beatboxing purposes, you need to lead K forward. And what that means is we go kata 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 kata. Kata 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 kata, because then we're going to get this backbeat of this K sound. We get let's talk about that sound. This is a K sound. And really, mouth shape is important here. Sound like the Transformers or something. And I think of the words like curtain or curry or curtsy, which aren't K words at all, are they? They're CU words. Because there's K and then there's this after it. Everyone without the K articulation, give me some. See, I got some lip cracking. I got some teeth showing. And then you articulate it with a K, but on a backbeat. So. And we can also do this sound inhaled. So we could do an inhale K sound. A lot of people call this the CL snare because you kind of put the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth and you suck in through the back of the tongue, like this. That's an inhale. Let me hear it. Inhale, K. If I hear it, let me see it. Because I can't hear you. For flute players, for wind instrument players, this is super important because then you can go. And then all of a sudden your backbeats become a sound and your breath, giving you a vamp and a pattern all built in together. You guys know this one, right? This is a classic sample. Anyhow, where we're at is, let's do this. This little vamp is go. Okay, thanks everybody for participating. I really appreciate it. All right, and so the third sound we're going to use is a bass drum sound, and there's a lot of ways to make this, but I teach it from the lips. The lips come together and they go. Now, a lot of people, when they first try this sound, they make a sound that sound like something like this. Yo, look at my throat. The prep to make this sound, I dropped my Adam's apple like this as far as possible. I know all y'all don't got Adam's apples, but you know what I'm talking about. See that? I fill that with air. And we can get a lot of pitches. And we can buzz. If you want to. As flute players, man, teachers get pretty burnt out if you tell your kids to buzz their lips, and I buzz out the side of my lip. It doesn't negatively affect my flute playing at all. Okay, we can also make the same sound with the tongue like this. And a lot of flute players find that to be easier. And then you can kind of double tongue those if you want. I'm getting some shakes of the head like, nah, I can't make that sound. So I mentioned that I had a job at one point at Trader Joe's. I worked at Trader Joe's also in San Francisco. And one of my favorite parts in the shift was when we closed the store and all the customers left. And we brought in some trucks, and we unloaded all the pallets, and we threw all the product up on the shelves. And you got to do this thing in a grocery store called facing product. That's where you go to all the cans of beans and you turn them to make them all look perfect on the shelf, right? And we would do this while listening to pop music piped over the speakers. And so every night I would get up to 4 hours of just going. So let's work on this sound. Let's do another 50 seconds right now of this sound. Come on now. And find what works. Stretch your mouth out. Open your eyebrows. I find actually that if you bring your head forward, this sound gets deeper. And if you bring your head back, the sound gets really shallow. And so even when I beatbox on the flute, I tend to cocapelli quite a bit because it helps with this sound. Don't hurt your throat, Lily. All right, nice. So if we start putting these together, there's some classic mnemonics that we can use. The first one is book. And so book, we get strong beats, back beats. Book, 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 as a beatbox. We're getting to boots and cats. Hold up. That's the next step. So we get And we can also do barbecue. And we could do book barbecue. So that would be, or barbecue book. That would be. Or what I call syncopated book, that's this. All right, and those are pretty like staple, like boom bap style sounds. And then we can start to fill that in with TS. So if we take book and we subdivide with TS, we get what's known as boots cats. A lot of people familiar with boots cats, and that would be. And the next level of that is to subdivide each of those sounds with the inhaled TS. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are now gonna like go off and show your friends how dope your beatboxing skills are, but this is all you really need to do to kind of get into beatboxing. You need a handful of sounds. You need a right. You need a semblance of, you know, a framework from which to hang these sounds on. You need to be able, when you hear a beat, to know where the strong beats are, to know where the back beats are, to know how you're going to subdivide it. These three sounds I shared with you also come from three distinct parts of the mouth: the lips, the front of the tongue, and the back of the tongue. The lip, the front of the tongue, and the back of the tongue. And so because of that, now there's 3 points of articulation in the mouth. We can get some very interesting triples. So a lot of people know about double tonguing, tucka 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 ta, and then people triple up their doubles by going tucka 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 ta, tucka 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 ta, right? And so we can actually get a true triple. So everybody say, sorry, gubba-da-ba, 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 gubba-da-ka, 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 gubba-da-ka. We get gubba-da-ba, gubba-da-ka, gubba-da-ba, gubba-da-ka. And so we can get some pretty fast sounds using these triple points of contact in the mouth with beatboxing as well. Okay. So I've talked a little bit about improvisation without rhythm. I talked about improvisation with rhythm. I talked a bit about beatboxing. Is there anything else you guys are curious to know more about from me? We have plenty of time, and I have no problem filling that time. But I would like to make sure right now, if I'm looking at the chat, if you guys want to like throw the direction, you know, of this, I'm happy to take it wherever you want it to go. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, yeah. Uneven meters with beatboxing, I mess with all the time. Or that's a 7. I did a 5 before. And I think that stuff's really interesting. It can be when you're busking on the street doing mixed meters is like cool for you in your mind, and then people generally don't give you any money. So I try to keep the uneven beats on more, through composed works, things like this. Um, I have a ton of thoughts about breathing. I did a really interesting yoga workshop over the New Year's, back when I thought 2020 was about to be lit and we were about to have the decade of our life before the horror show like rolled around. So I had a really dope New Year's. I was in Costa Rica, and a lot of the instructors did something called Kundalini yoga. I'm not sure if you know about this, but there's a bunch of great breathing techniques um, in the Kundalini reality, breath of fire and things like this. But there's also kind of a devout relationship with the seven, they call them the seven chakras in your body. And this is like maybe hippie trippy for you or not, but I actually find this stuff to be really valuable. Because of all the tightness I get when I play, going back and forth between classical and non-classical, I tend to get some pretty throaty breaths, which I'm always trying to open, and then I need to constrict to make these. You can't play this on a flute with a classical openness. Instead, playing flute like that is something more like what I would call head voice, versus classical flute, which is chest voice and all about open and resonance. And this is why a lot of classical flute players can't play jazz idioms, because they don't know how to use this part of the breathing reality. But back to the concept of these seven chakras, where we have like the tailbone, beneath the belly button, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. Spending time deep breathing into all of these zones is super important. And I would find another thing that I've really found for breathing is that the concept of tail up. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but I always felt like it sucked an orchestra that we had to sit and play, because I get such a better sound when I stand and play. And I never really knew why that was. And it turns out that there's a muscle, the psoas muscle, and it actually connects your legs to your abdomen, and in fact goes directly to your diaphragm. And so deep breathing, if you're sitting or standing, changes unless you're really conscious on focusing that. And I found that if you think about, they call it raising your tail, or the lower part of your back to J up. And if you pivot your hips and really roll everything here forward so that your tail comes up, it really opens up breathing so well. And I highly recommend fooling around with that. You don't have to be a master yogi to get benefits from this. So that's my thoughts kind of on breathing lately. I think it's a really interesting concept. Everyone breathes. Actually, breathing and the ears are tied together, because everybody breathes. Even when you pass out, hopefully you still breathing. Like your body takes over breathing. And so in order for us to learn how to breathe, we have to stop the automatic process and own up all of it and be mindful all the time while you're playing. And I think our ears are the same way. Our ears always work. You will be sleeping and wake up because you hear something. And so we get lazy with our ears. We need to train our ears and do massive ear training. Even as professionals, it never stops. And because otherwise your ears will just take over and you won't pay attention. Your ears just soak up so much background noise that we just kind of, we don't dive in sometimes and train the ears. And this is something you can do. You don't need a teacher to mess with you. But like if you hear a scale or an interval, you should be able to know what that is immediately. All right, okay, let me get back to chat here. Oh, the conversation started about school professor. Oh, thank you very much, Laura. But here, so and so actually, these two, the comment from Dalton and from Laura. uh, kind of go hand in hand because I've always been a good student. I was a good student before college. You wouldn't always know that because I always had a pretty robust social life, but I always got good grades and I always went to school and I really liked school. And school is super easy because you show up to class and here's the syllabus. And as long as you learn what they ask you to learn, you will get the good grade. But actually real life isn't like that. And so once I got out of school, I was shocked, dismayed. There was no more plan. I had to make my own plan, and I hadn't learned to do that myself in school. You know, I was always waiting for other people to tell me what's the next piece I need to learn. You know, sometimes our recitals are used to build your development as a musician, less than making a recital that's banging so people will show up and pay you money for it. You know, those are totally different concerns as a professional musician versus as a student. And there's good reasons to learn all this. You know, I think classical music is a very scholastic pursuit. It's not enough to play Mozart. You need to play Mozart correctly. And Mozart's on a lot of auditions because it weeds out the people that didn't learn to do it correctly. But once you're out there in the real world, correctly is a little bizarre. Like, I listen to a lot of classical music on the radio, and I can't believe the recordings some of these orchestras put out. Some of these people are playing so terrible and so out of tune, yet these people won jobs at some point. This conductor won the job, you know, and this guy's conducting this piece like this. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so there's, you know, in college for me there was correct flute tone, but now as an adult, or not as an adult but as a professional out there, there are so many great flute tones that you can use, and you don't need to wait until you have the dope flute tone. A lot of people made a lot of great recordings with trash flute tone that are amazing recordings. Okay, and so I think that school in some ways corrupts our mind. You know, you got to wait until you're ready. But get out there and find what you're interested in. And a personal anecdote of mine is that although I improvised and was into a lot of different styles in school, I didn't beatbox in school. And had you told me when I was in school that I would be known as the beatboxing flute player, I wouldn't even know what that means. And so some of you out there, you know, might be the world's best slow jam cello player, and you don't even know that yet, and you don't even know what slow jams are. And actually it doesn't matter. You just need to learn a little about as much as possible, because no matter what happens, I think having a music career a bit is just staying in the game. 10 years later, if you're still playing, you have a music career. That's what a music career is. Sometimes it makes you wealthy, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you write music, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have your own group, sometimes you play with a large group. Sometimes you have control, sometimes you don't. But having a music career is just staying in the game. And if you stay in the game, you're going to get a lot of bizarre opportunities. And if you're not of the mindset to say yes to an opportunity, even if you aren't ready to take advantage of that opportunity, you're really missing out. So I had an opportunity. I was out of grad school and I was really bummed out on all of this stuff. I was like, life sucks. I don't know what I'm doing. I was teaching 30 students. I wanted to be a performer. I was living in Ohio. I wanted like a grand life. And I woke up one day and I was like, man, should I just play video games all day? Or should I practice today? Because no one's making me practice anymore, you know? And I was like, I don't know. And I kid you not, I got a phone call and it was this gal. She's like, yeah, we need someone to play flute in China. Would you mind getting on a plane and playing in our orchestra in China? I was like, that sounds awesome. And I hung up the phone, and then I was like, well, now should I practice or play video games? I got the job, so what should I do? You know, like, I didn't even have to practice. And so being able also, you know, with me and beatboxing, I've been on a lot of media. I did like some corny TV shows. I've done a lot of interesting things, just because I put myself out there and I wanted to be out there, and I put out videos that could have been better, and I just put it out there. I just got involved. It's nice. Had I had a viral video now, I would have a fortune, but instead I have a career. So for all of you out there wondering where your place is in music, what you're trying to do, I dare call it corny. Man, that's a corny show. Anyway, all of you out there, um, the sky's the limit as long as you can stay in the game and as long as you have a plan. And even if you don't have a plan, you're never going to get an opportunity unless you put yourself out there. And a great way to put yourself out there is by working with other people and trying to network with other people and learning new tricks. If all of a sudden you want to learn Indian classical music, you can. And it's super interesting. And you might meet people and you might get turned on by that process. And before you know it, you might find a career path in there or a flavor in there that you can use, for your life. So, wait, okay, here's it. Lo-fi hip. So, someone mentioned the lo-fi hip hop beats to listen to, and I got to say that's one of the greatest channels to improvise on. Pull that up and improvise to that channel. There's a couple of them, with the little anime cover or whatever, and any of them are great. And also, those are really great to aspire. If you have a computer, if you have GarageBand, if you're into sampling, making lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to is a great place to start in creating kind of computer-oriented music. I think that is a really interesting way to bring music to the youth. I show up in front of a classroom of kids and I got a flute and I hear a lot of but then I like beatbox and that's cool. But if you don't have beatboxing, being able to pull up some fresh beats and playing over it, I don't think that's hokey. I think that's actually has a lot to do with how people think about music today. And I don't think it's bad. It's actually something wonderful to inspire, to aspire towards. I have not done much with free improv in the sense I think you're talking about. It's like this. When I go and see people play classical music and they're using sheet music, I think it's BS. Unless it's like with an orchestra or something. But if you see a soloist playing with sheet music, I think it's BS because I can read music. I can play pretty well sight reading music. How much better does it get if I practice? It gets better. I know it better, but it gets way better if I've actually internalized something and memorized something. And so I feel cheated when I see artists play with sheet music a little bit. That's a particular thing because always when I was a kid, I had to play everything by memory. Every competition I ever did, I had to do by memory until I got to college. But when I see free improv, where people are like, man, we've never played together and we're going to free improv for the next hour. I'm like, man, I don't dig it. I like organization. Personally, and that's me, and you can think my concept of that is garbage. That's totally fine, man. You could be totally into improvisation. I know a lot of great artists are and have, but it's not my thing. I don't like to do it, and so I don't tend to do it to my audiences. And in fact, when I play with the trio, what we end up doing is we have a lot of improvisation, but it's short little moments of improvisation, solo through some changes, or this little bit is just a little bit free. But instead, we tend to do things kind of short and sweet. A lot of our tunes are under 3 or even 4 minutes long, and they're not just big extendo jams. But we always joke, when there's only like a couple people in the audience, it's like, oh, maybe it's jazz odyssey night. We're just going to go out there and fake it. And as long as you keep a straight face, they'll never know that wasn't the plan, But like I said, I think that's not for me. But that being said, I do a ton of free improv in the practice room. And I like to record it. And then you go back through all of it and it's all trash, but then you might find a really nice little nugget in there. And for those of you aspiring towards composing, I think this is a great tool. Record yourself free improving and then go back and listen to it. And the percentage, it's like 99 to 1. You know, for 99 minutes, you will get 1 minute of gold. You know, you got to wade through all that crap to find the thing that's actually interesting. And you never know. It could be the first thing you played or the last thing you played. And this is really good for self-sampling, throwing that over beats as well. You know, if you have a workflow for that, that can be really quick. I don't know. Do anybody here sample themselves and throw it over beats? A little bit? All right. So that's my thoughts on that. But you know, kids do what they're told and don't philosophize about it. You know, they just do all the work. And adults philosophize about everything and then don't do any of the work, and so then don't learn the skill. You know, and so as an adult, go ahead and analyze these concepts, but do it. Do it and have a plan on how you're going to get better at it, you know, and don't be shy about putting in the work. Anything is going to take work. And so if you have a plan on how to work through that, you can do it. Just do it. Transformers.
Can I ask a joke question?
Yeah.
What was it like to star on hit Nickelodeon sitcom iCarly and be the cousin of Samantha Puckett? I actually did grow up watching that show, and so I did watch that episode when I was like 11 or whatever, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. So
I assume I'm older than most of you. I'm 43. When I showed up to the Nickelodeon studios, I was maybe 29 or 30. I'd never heard of any of those people. We shot that episode before, like I shot it in like April or May, and then the first season started the next fall. So, and I remember being on the set and the producer was like, man, this show's going to be big. And I was like, it is, you know, because it was really corny on set. But I was there. I met Miranda. I was there on, I believe, Miranda Cosgrove's 13th birthday. Like, I met her mom. And, you know, backstage was dope. There were like tubs of licorice and all of the sweet treats you could ever want. Like, it looked like a really amazing place to be like a young teenage actor or actress and just, you know, I think LA is really cool, and I think that stuff is all cool. But I personally hate doing TV. I don't know if you've ever done a TV episode or TV shows of any sort, but it sucks. There are levels of producers you have to go through. There are countless rehearsals. And then by the time you finally get in front of the camera, you're like so sapped of energy or inspiration, and like actually it'll make you respect actors and such, that they can wade through all of that and then someone says go and they can bring the charm. You know, it's such a stale scene behind the scenes, and that's not for me. You know, like us musicians, we don't do that much practice. Have a rehearsal or two, bang, concert, done. You know, actors be like, then we gotta block it, and then we gotta have a table reading, and then and it's like all this stuff, man. It's not for me. But the power of TV is such that you watch that and you think that's cool, and now you know about that. So even though I have a distaste for TV, I do try to do it as much as possible, you know, if I can fit it into my schedule. I've been overseas. I've been to the UK a couple of times to do some TV and various things in the States. If you can get into TV work on your instrument, that's good stuff. But chances are you'll have to be in a major media market to do that. And there's only so many in the US. You know, New York is a major media market, and LA is a major media market. And then past that, you have pockets, Nashville maybe, or Austin maybe. But like, that's something I would really reckon with. How many people here have already gone to grad school? or are going to grad school? How many people haven't gone to grad school yet? Okay, okay. And I mention this because for me, I think that going to grad school is like your ticket to a new place to have your career. Like you could move to Paris if that's what you want. And if you go to grad school there, that's where you will have a career because people will take the degree there seriously, you know? But like I did everything in Cleveland and then I left Cleveland, and except for like 5 people that have heard about the Cleveland Institute of Music, you know, like they're like, so what? You have a degree from there? I totally don't care. But if you have a degree from a local place, that's a big deal. And so using school, like I said before, for networking is really important, and kind of using, you know, where you go is important. I don't know. Like I said, also now we're in a COVID reality and everyone's teleworking. So now musicians can just live in the middle of nowhere. Maybe that's the new way. You know, I'm not sure. But if you want to get on TV and if you want lots of gigs and you want to be busy doing that kind of stuff, you really should seriously consider about figuring out how to live in a big city. Big city. Like the biggest city you could think of. That's my 2 cents on that. Oh yeah. Someone's in London? Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, London got a lot of music. And they got like a 5 million symphony orchestras there too. None of them get paid very well, but like they're there. There's work there. It's wild out there too. You know, England got these like levels you have to learn to get into conservatory. You have to like pass all these tests. And so then you have all of these really great musicians, but they all play the same thing. Whereas America, you never know what you're going to get. You have no idea. And sometimes it's a lot of trash, but sometimes it's something really amazing that slips through the cracks too. It's pretty interesting. Oh, yeah. Well, but composers need people to write for, right? That's right. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So what's up? Are you guys down with this? You guys got more questions? Should I play some more?
Yes, please.
Yes. So, well, I'll play you. I gave you one little sheet of loops from my book, which I will play, and you can look at while I play it. But the idea behind these is that, you know, I wrote a book, a beatbox method book for those trying to learn how to beatbox on the flute. And I wanted to balance having things that were simple and cool at the same time. And with beatboxing, a lot of the cool stuff is really complicated. And so it's hard to break down this stuff into finding something very simple yet cool. And so I came up with these ideas. It's like extended vamps. You know, this is a loop. These are 8-bar loops, and more or less. And then you can kind of play with them. It gives you a kernel, an idea to play with, and then you can work with it. So the first one I got, number 1, sounds like this. All right, and I added a couple of chords in here too. And so as you can tell, this is drastically different than what I was playing when I started off playing today. I played a lot more notes and a lot more beatbox sounds. But beatboxing isn't really a solo sport. I believe it should be done with others. And so I'm giving you this, even if you don't beatbox on a flute, that someone could play the melody, someone else could beatbox, and someone else could play the chords on their chord instrument. And you can kind of make a little jam. Will it win a Grammy? Probably not. Okay, but the idea is that just a little bit of information can go a long way. If you're just playing this melody without beatboxing, you can really, do a lot of interesting things with it. So you can really mess with that quite a bit. Now, number 2 uses this concept, this flute sound called Aeolian sound. And so this first bar sounds like, you hear that? Kind of funky. I'm a fan of that one. Okay, here, I'm gonna just play these down. Here's number 3. Oh wait. I tried to scroll down on the screen. My bad. Number 4 will be like, so here's 4 little loops. I really think those are a lot of fun. I know that kids can learn these. I know that if you have studied flute for more than a year, then you can definitely play these flute licks. These beatboxing licks are using exactly what I already taught you. Book, barbecue, syncopated book is all here, and there's no TS sounds. There's no subdivision. Kind of the flute does the subdivision, the plosives do the strong beats, backbeats, kind of a thing. But one of my favorite ways to do beatbox on a flute is to do just what they call 4 on the floor, and that's kind of like what I did with the Darth Vader march. So 4 on the floor would be. Now, it turns out that is one of the more awkward beatbox sounds to make, but is the easiest to use on the flute. So we can really tear around these sounds. So that's just a little improv with that sound. I love it. I get a lot of mileage with that sound. And I think, every instrument can make some banging sound. On a cello, you can hit the body. Everyone can kind of come up with a sound. Using it as a pulse, using that sound instead as a backbeat. These can be a nice little rhythmic pattern that you can play with too. If you can write it out, so much better. All right. What, do you want me to play some more? You guys sucker for playing? You guys got more questions? Don't make me play classical music.
Yeah, I think if you want to play one more thing, and then we'll probably take down the live stream.
Okay, cool. Well, here, I got a couple more messages. Oh, that's what you're saying. I consider doing online. Doing stuff online. I teach lessons online, and I do my Patreon online. I'm regularly making how-to videos, and pretty comprehensive stuff is all now on Patreon. And since the quarantine pandemic started, I actually am a family man. I got a wife and 2 kids, so I'm fully in charge of my kids, and they ain't been in school. They've been with me for 4 months. So I have kind of removed myself from doing any gigs or anything like that. I'm virtually out of work. All of my work has been canceled through the new year. I don't have any work. I don't have any great answers to tell you on how to drum up work in these interesting times. But if you don't have kids or family obligations, this is a great time, like everyone's saying, to learn a couple of new tricks. Learn a new instrument, learn a new style, learn a new way of playing, strengthen your ears, dive into and listen to music that you've never listened to. Get into computers and music if you haven't already. I think the world's moving forward with that. And if you don't know about MIDI or attack, delay, sustain, release, if you don't know what that is on a synth or how to, use a sequencer, this is a great time to use it, and it's never been easier. So many of these things are HTML. You can just get it right in your browser. Like there's an 808 emulator right in your browser. If you don't know what an 808 is, that is a problem. How many people here know what an 808 is? Okay. The Roland 808 was like the rhythm machine, and is used in modern trap production, rap. Modern rap production is all 808. And so that's a really recognizable sound and an instrument just as viable as any instrument. The 808 is an instrument. And like I said, you don't have to buy one. You can get it on your browser and learn to sequence it right on it. Like I say, it's never been easier. You can start playing around with those sounds right now. All right, here. So since I style myself a man of many different styles, I'm gonna make you guys sit through some classical music. I'm gonna play one of my favorites here. I'm a big fan of this dude Telemann. The flute's got like all this great Baroque music, and then all the romantic dudes they soured on the flute for some reason. And then until the French were into the flute at the end of the 1800s, like we didn't have no rep, like we don't have much stuff that Beethoven wrote, you know what I'm saying? And Brahms didn't drop the wildest flute concerto, unfortunately. I wish he had. So we got a bunch of French music, a bunch of modern music, and we got a bunch of great Baroque music. Telemann he wrote 12 solo fantasies for the flute. He also wrote 12 for the violin. They're great too. But I've heard these performed on all sorts of different instruments, notably the oboe. Right? I don't know if you know these, Shoshana, but people will be rocking these on the oboe all the time. Alex Klein made a great record of these, if you know who that is. He used to play oboe in the Chicago Symphony, I believe. Anyway, so this is the first fantasy for flute. I dig it because it's unaccompanied. This is how it's supposed to be. I don't have to sequence MIDI behind me, and I don't have to ask a pianist to come play with me. And so I dig it. Here we go. Classical music. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Great. Thanks so much, Greg.
Of course.
I'm going to take down the live stream now, and if there's any other questions, we can get to them after that. But thanks so much for being here. Everybody should check out Greg's Patreon. It should be in the